Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Healthcare Law and Ethical Considerations. I'm John Rhodes, and I'll be your instructor over the next 8 weeks. I first off have to apologize for a couple of things. I want to preempt a couple of things as we go through this. First of all, I normally dress a little bit more professionally than this. However, I live in just north of Denver, Colorado, and we received a bunch of snow, and the roads are terrible today, so I decided to work from home. So I guess I could have just dressed up in a collared shirt or a tie with my sweatpants, and it would have been fine. But I figured, what the heck? I figure you wouldn't mind. So the other thing is, I apologize in advance if my dog starts barking, which means someone is walking along the sidewalk in front of my house. So anyways, I like to do these videos, and I'll post as we introduce each module each week. I like to post anywhere from 10 to 20-minute video, just sort of introducing you to the topic, covering some of the materials from the reading that we won't necessarily cover in our discussion questions or our assignments each week, just to hopefully give you the full experience of healthcare related legal and ethical issues. So as I noted in my bio, I'm a healthcare attorney by trade, and I've been doing it for quite a number of years. Recently became the chief privacy officer for the law firm I work for. And so I deal a lot in the sort of data, not just HIPAA, but data privacy world. I was in private practice right out of law school for a number of years. Then I was in-house with a large specialty dialysis provider, doing all kinds of healthcare things. And now for the last year plus 2 or 3 months, I've been back in private practice here in Denver. So I'm excited. I love this class. I've been teaching this for almost a year now, and it's been a lot of fun. So I'm going to take you through some just sort of general introduction to some concepts that we'll be covering, and then at the end I'm going to talk about some thoughts that I have in terms of how I think you can be successful in this class. And I usually get an email or two every other class from a student who's a little nervous or scared about taking this class, only because they feel like they don't have a legal mind, and they're nervous about how difficult the course may be. And I would say, if you talk to anyone who's taken this course generally and taken it from me, I would say that's inaccurate. You don't need a legal mind to do well in this class. I think if you follow the rubric, if you follow the guidance and instruction that I'll give you through these videos and throughout the course, you'll be fine. And follow the feedback I give you on your assignments. My number one objective in this class is for you to get value out of it. We're not going to cover every healthcare law or ethical issue known to man in 8 weeks, but hopefully we will cover, and you will be able to learn some skills with respect to how to view ethical issues in the healthcare world, and how to view legal issues in the healthcare world. So that's my number one goal: how to analyze, how to think critically about those things. So that's what we're going to be working on. So as we think about healthcare legal ethical issues, one thing to remember is, the concept, and many of you, I'm sure, are in the healthcare field. I think most of my students are either nurses or nurse practitioners, or CNAs, or some sort of work in some sort of clinical capacity, or hospital administrators. But you're in the healthcare industry, and so you realize that the whole concept of ethics in healthcare and legal issues in healthcare really just permeates the entire field. Anything from, and we'll talk a little bit about this over the next couple of weeks, but end-of-life issues, and then we'll talk a little bit later on, I think in week 7 or 8, but end-of-life issues, the advanced directives, DNRs, and going from that to sort of this macro perspective of healthcare in healthcare policy, and we hear a lot about that with the presidential debates going on, and we'll hear more about that over the next year or so. But is healthcare a right or a privilege? Should it be conditioned on whether you can pay for it or not? And so, or your pre-existing conditions and things like that. So these concepts, these ethical issues, really permeate the entire field. And one thing that is quite obvious, if you have a conversation with anyone who has an opinion, it can quickly turn into this sort of political discussion, which I try to avoid in this class. And certainly everyone, most everyone, I think, has a pretty strong opinion of how healthcare should be delivered or what healthcare policy should or shouldn't be, and which is fine. And I think this is a good forum. And some of the discussion questions we'll have over the next 8 weeks will hopefully invoke some of those opinions, which is totally fine. And I think it's right to be able to express those opinions. But with the caveat of, we all may have different opinions. I may have different opinions from you or you from each other. And that's fine. We'll just be respectful of those opinions, and this will be a great learning experience for everyone. One other thing that I wanted to make sure we covered is this class is divided into two pretty distinct components, and one of them is this legal component. We're going to be studying this one single case throughout we're all going to be studying the same case throughout the course, and we're going to be extracting and analyzing and thinking critically about the legal issues in this case. And then the second component, we're going to be talking about the ethical issues in the case. And so those are very separate and distinct issues. But you know that in the healthcare industry, many times legal issues can bleed over into ethical issues and vice versa. So, for example, if you go to chapter 10 of your text, there's an example. A physician from another office steps into your office, asks to see the chart of a neighbor whom he believes may have an infectious disease. He states the neighbor is a good friend and that she will not mind if he reviews her medical chart. Is it legal for you to give the chart to the physician? So I'm not going to answer that, but I think many of you could guess what the answer is there. But there are ethical issues to consider there, and this whole concept of right to privacy and patient rights, individual rights. But there's also an obvious legal issue here that's related to patient confidentiality and HIPAA, as well as probably some state privacy laws that we'll talk about here in a few weeks. When I was a brand new lawyer, brand new associate with a law firm, I practiced in Kansas for a number of years, and we had a client. It was either some sort of healthcare facility. I think it was a hospital, maybe. And we got a call one day where whoever the practice, the hospital administrator, whoever it was, described to us an issue that they had with whether their nurses either did a Facebook post or Instagram. This is years ago, so Instagram may not have been around, but and said something to the effect that, oh, hey, this college quarterback, it was a university there locally. I think it was University of Missouri or some school in Missouri. Was in today here at the hospital, and I guess it followed an injury that he had sustained in the previous game, and it looks like he'll be fine. And then she posted that on a social media platform, and and the question was, what do we do? How do we remediate that? So there are obvious ethical issues, there are obvious legal issues tied to that, and just being able to think about that critically, analyze it, and how to remediate that are things that we're going to consider here. What about someone who presents to an emergency room or an urgent care center or some emergency department and has no way to pay for it? There's a significant injury. There is a legitimate emergency, but has no way to pay for it, right? So I think most of us collectively as a society would say, this person needs the care that they need in order to sustain life, in order to mitigate this emergency. regardless of the ability to pay. And this is a great example of how I think collectively as a society, this is what we think, this is a position we take, and that extends over, bleeds over into the legal world, where many years ago, Congress passed a law called EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, that basically prohibits that. And so, and requires the emergency department to provide a screening and certain care in order to sustain the patient and get rid of that emergency situation. So, these are just kind of just random thoughts in terms of the confluence of legal and ethical issues, but at the same time, we're going to look at those in a pretty separate and distinct manner. So, I mean, there are other laws that we could go through. The False Claims Act, for example, it prohibits healthcare providers from committing fraud or holding on to payments that they're not entitled to. There were payments from a government program. So, I mean, that's an ethical issue, right? But it's also a legal issue that could carry with it significant penalties and serious damages. So, okay, so a few things I wanted to cover here as I go over my notes. In terms of just some thoughts about how to be successful in this class. So when I think about legal analysis, and you will hear from me week after week after week talk about this concept of legal analysis. And if you go, and I ask all of you to go to your book and look at the discussion on the IRAC method, IRAC, of legal analysis. It stands for issue, rule, application, and conclusion. I do not care about the conclusion, right? For me, there's within some certain parameters of common sense. There's no right or wrong answer. For me, the important skill and value that I want you to get out of this class, and the one thing I will be emphasizing every week, is the concept of analysis, the concept of thinking about these issues critically. And not just thinking about them critically, but writing that critical analysis down on a piece of paper, and in this case, your assignment. And so I ask you to really look at that, the IRAC method, issue, rule, application, conclusion. If your analysis is reasonable, your conclusion is going to be reasonable. So that's why I don't care about the conclusion. As long as your analysis is reasonable, you'll be fine. So when I was a sophomore in college, I took a physics class, which I did not like. I mean, I was not good at math. I'm still not good at math. Not good at science. I really wasn't good at anything. I guess that's why I kind of went to law school later on. So, but my physics professor always talked about how easy physics was. And it was super annoying, but he had a great point, which was, you got the formula, you got the numbers, you throw the numbers in the formula, turn the crank, and here comes your answer, right? So for him, that was super easy. For me, I struggle with it, but with legal analysis, it's the same thing. You have your rule. It could be the law, or a standard, or whatever it may be. You have your rule, you have your facts, right? Here's the issue, here's the rule, here are the facts, apply the facts to the rule, turn the crank, kind of same concept, and then you have your conclusion. So it's kind of the same concept that you would apply in math or science or anything like that. You would apply in performing a legal analysis. And when we talk about, as we get into legal components here in the next few weeks, for me, legal components means not just the legal claims, but also the elements of those claims. So, for example, the big one that we're going to be talking about throughout this class is this concept of negligence or medical malpractice, which malpractice is really just a negligence case in the healthcare context. So negligence or medical malpractice has 4 elements to it. um, uh, many of you, if you're a clinician, if you're some sort of practitioner, you know that things can go wrong in a procedure or things can go wrong with a patient, and you've acted within the correct standard. Things just go wrong. So when things go wrong, that doesn't mean there was negligence. There are four elements to negligence, right? So the first is there's a duty. There's a duty. There's a duty of the physician or the practitioner, whoever it is, to provide certain care to the patient. So that's the element. So what's the rule? And that's in your book, and you'll read that and figure it out. So what's the rule? When is that duty established? So that's element one. Element two is a breach of that duty. So when is that duty breached? Well, we look at that in medical practice as a deviation from the standard of care. So what's the rule on that? What does it mean, standard of care? And that rule is in your book. So you look at the rule. First of all, let's go back to the first element. Duty, here's the rule, here are the facts, boom, conclusion. This element is met or it's not met. That's up to you. Second element, here's the issue, here's the rule, breach of deviation of standard of care. Here are the specific facts from the case. I'm not talking about just general facts, specific facts. This facts X, Y, and Z, apply here and here. This is why he didn't meet the standard of care. And give me facts. So boom, you got the rule, you applied the facts, come to your conclusion, he didn't meet the standard of care, or whatever it is. Third element is causation. Did the actual act of negligence cause the injury? Was there causation? And then same thing. What was the rule, application, apply the facts? Well, yeah, I mean it did cause the injury because of X, Y, and Z. Boom, conclusion. Last one is was there actual injury? There has to be actual injury. Same thing. Injury, facts, conclusion, boom. Here's the reason that's important. If you can't show even one element, the absence of even one element in a negligence case means there is no negligence. Okay? So if you prove everything except you can't prove injury, there's no negligence. It doesn't matter what the doctor did. If you can't prove causation, then there's no negligence. And again, it doesn't matter how egregious the doctor's acts were. If there's no causation, there was no negligence. And so there may be ethical issues, but there's no negligence. And so that's why going through each element, I can't stress to you enough how important that analysis is. Your text refers to those four elements as the 4 Ds. All right, and I don't remember what duty, dereliction of duty, something and something. I don't remember, but there are 4 Ds. But regardless, there are 4 elements that I just talked about, and you should be able to find those. When I grade, I follow the rubric. Okay, I look at the rubric, and I'll give you feedback within the rubric. And that's most of the time. Sometimes I'll just give general comments, depends on how it went. But most of the time, especially on the bigger projects, I'll go section by section in the rubric. So I just follow the rubric. If there's a question of how I graded something, it will largely depend on whether the requirements of that particular rubric section were met. So that's pretty easy. In terms of advice, watch these videos. I think I give valuable, hopefully, in terms of doing well on the assignments. Hopefully I give valuable tidbits. And actually one time I looked these, I do this by YouTube, as you'll see. And I looked up one of my old YouTube videos and showed it to one of my kids, and they just, I have 2 teenagers, so they already think I am like the most boring person, have the most boring job in the entire world, which some days I think they're right. But I get it. Sometimes this material can get dry. Hopefully there's some value that you can take out of these. And but I would encourage you to watch these videos. Engage, have fun with the material, turn in assignments timely, and then follow that IRAC method in your analysis, and you should be fine. So again, if you don't have a legal mind, please stick with the class. I've had students tell me before that they've never really dealt with anything legal and they didn't feel like they could do this, but you can absolutely do it. There's no doubt about it. Just follow these steps. Follow the things that I've asked you to do. Follow the rubric sections, and I'm here. So, my contact information is in the announcement, my intro announcement. You can email me. You can text me, you can call me, and I should, for the most part, be pretty responsive. So, anyways, good luck on kicking off a great first week, and I look forward to engaging with all of you, and hope it all goes well. Thanks. Good luck. Bye.